Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. I recall when Signature Bank failed that there was a lot of blame placed on digital assets, so I want to explore that a little bit. Mr. Shea, you put a lot of emphasis in your testimony on your customers in the digital asset industry, and you mentioned in your testimony digital assets 10 times, implying that digital assets was a driver of Signature Bank's collapse. So I want to explore that a little bit. Did Signature Bank hold digital assets?
I did not. Signature Bank did not hold or custody any digital assets, but I just want to clarify one thing.
And did you trade digital assets?
No.
So the point here is you had depositors that were in the digital asset industry, correct?
Yes.
But the deposits were in U.S. dollars. They were in cash, like any other depositor, correct?
Yes, all the deposits were in U.S. dollars.
Okay, so according to the New York DFS, deposits from digital asset businesses in cash, not crypto, made up about 18% of total deposits prior to your bank's collapse. Also, according to New York DFS, outflows on March 10th were relatively proportional, meaning depositors who had nothing to do with digital assets were responsible for the significant majority of withdrawals during the run. Do you agree with that statement?
Yes, I did not point earlier, as in the first part of your first question, to digital assets being a particular cause or not.
Well, you used the term 10 times during your testimony, and then later, of course, in the previous questions from Senator Cortez Masto, you've placed blame everywhere, but accepted absolutely none yourselves. Now, from the FDIC, the root cause, this is a quote, the root cause of Signature Bank's failure was poor management. Signature's board of directors and management pursued rapid, unrestrained growth without developing and maintaining adequate risk management practices and controls. So you had regulators telling you that there were inadequate risk management controls in your bank, and you allowed them to go unaddressed for a very long time. Why is that?
The board was making sure that these were addressed. The bank was actively trying to ameliorate and making progress in the controls.
And what were the
controls?
controls?
Doing such things as raising insured brokered CDs, such as seeking to have repo agreements with primary dealers, such as further diversifying its deposit base, such as limiting largest deposits, such as holding high-quality, shorter-term securities, holding assets that were strong assets, continuing to increase, doing liquidity stress testing on a very frequent basis, and improving those liquidity stress test models, to the best of my knowledge, as was being shown to the regulators. So the bank was, from my perspective as chairman of the board, taking active roles to ameliorate and to address those risks on an active basis.
Yet on March 12th, there were requests for withdrawals of about $8 billion, and there were only about $4 billion in assets in the bank, correct?
I'm not familiar with what those numbers were. On Friday, there were requests for $18 billion in deposit withdrawals, all in the space of a few hours.
Okay, so the cash available to fulfill those withdrawals was inadequate.
That morning, my recollection was that the bank had $29 billion in available liquidity from the Federal Home Bank and Federal Reserve plus the cash. I believe that number that you mentioned.
Well, I noticed that you described in your testimony that, and Mr. Howell, you described it as profoundly disappointing. Mr. Shea, you said it was a devastating day for you. I'm sure it was. It also was for your employees and your depositors. I am a proponent of state-chartered banks. I'm a proponent of digital asset industries. It looks like there's been a lot of deflection of blame onto those particular depositors that deal in digital assets and onto regulators, but you haven't accepted any blame yourself. And so I find that disconcerting and disappointing. I know you're profoundly disappointed. I can assure you that your depositors are as well. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Senator Lummis. Senator